Joining me now is Congressman Eric Swalwell, Democrat of California. First, just Congressman, as you know, a colleague of all these individuals, someone who was there on January 6th, of course, your reaction to what you heard there.
Imagine how much safer America would be today if Kevin McCarthy's tryst with the truth had lasted longer than a couple days. But he's gotten back together with the election lies, and he has become exactly the person he described he didn't want his colleagues becoming on those calls, which was someone who would enable or incite violence. But instead of protecting Liz Cheney, who stood up with integrity, Kevin McCarthy is supporting Liz Cheney's opponent in the Republican primary. And when you listen, to Kevin McCarthy, he was absolutely right about almost everything he said privately to his members. And what has changed? What evidence came out to suggest he should have changed his position? He had put America first for a couple of hours and days after January 6th, but now he's putting Kevin first because he realizes he needs Donald Trump if he ever wants to be Speaker of the House, which means for America, Donald Trump essentially would be Speaker of the House if Kevin McCarthy were ever to get that close to the gavel.
Does it make it worse or better in your mind that they know? I mean, there's something, in a weird way, there's something reassuring about listening to them correctly respond to these things. Even the response to the Barry Moore tweet, right? Where Barry Moore, days after this, is saying, well, it looks like a black cop shot a white lady. And, and they're like, oh, my God. That is like, there's something reassuring where it's like, yes, correct. Yes, I'm not crazy. You're not crazy. The people watching this aren't crazy. That is the right reaction. That is like, but then that can't be preserved in the gravitational pull of the propaganda that followed.
Chris, when I was a prosecutor and we had to prove a witness's, cognitive abilities, I had to demonstrate to a jury that they knew the difference between a truth and a lie, or the difference between right and wrong. And this was often the case with child witnesses. And here you can prove to America that Kevin McCarthy knew the difference between right and wrong. He initially, his instinct was to go the right way. But when it came to whether putting America first or Kevin first, he chose the wrong way. And so I think it should be held even more strongly against him that the guy knew, and because his own self-interests were above America's interests, he took a pledge of allegiance to himself rather than America. That I think is the worst possible outcome and the worst possible judgment someone could make.
Matt Gaetz, of course, this is chum for him. He loves to be have things to talk about other than the fact that the Department of Justice appears to be investigating him for the possible crime of child sex trafficking. And he's running around with a statement on Twitter saying these, they're weak and sniveling and, sort of denigrating all of them. But what's striking to me is that the power, I don't know, this is how it looks from the outside, so I'm curious if you feel the same way. The power balance has shifted to that part of the faction. So the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Paul Gosars and the Matt Gaetzes, they're the kind of the avant-garde of the Republican Party. They will be the avant-garde of a Republican majority should it come to pass in the midterms.
That's absolutely right. And they declare themselves, Chris, as they're not the fringe. They proudly have said over and over, we are the base, and they are the base. Yeah. And the question they have to ask themselves is, even if McCarthy is with you today, you have now heard what he thought about you when he was speaking privately. So he's lost the trust not just of the American people. He's not just proven himself to be a 24-karat liar. How could he lead this conference? And I think for the American people, though, who need a responsible Republican Party, what worries me is that there's no backstop or insurance policy against Donald Trump if Kevin McCarthy was ever to lead Congress, if the Republicans were ever to be in charge after the midterms. There's just no guardrails anymore. He had a test. He started to go the right way. He started to give the right answer, and he has utterly shown us that he would fail a future test.
Yeah, and not just as and I know you know this, just for viewers to point out, that McCarthy himself and Scalise as well, again, a person who has survived a horrific act of violence targeted at Republican members of Congress, right? Shot multiple times, had to come back from rehab. I mean, there's a particularly pathos when he's talking about how dangerous this all is. Those individuals also voted to overturn the election right after the insurrection. So, you know, there was never like they were real profiles encouraged, but at least privately they understood what was going on. Congressman Eric Swalwell, really appreciate you taking some time tonight. Thank you very much for joining us.